access has been permanently revoked. I don't send warnings anymore, I send coordinates, some cortical coordinates. Every word subordinates the lesser man who's standing lesser corridors debating whether consequences got an origin. It does, it's me, positioned at the door again. My penmanship is forensic, every metaphor is a tourniquet. I tighten it with etiquette, I loosen it with burial rites. You carry knives, the verbal fights, I carried silence, surgical, nocturnal. Write my journal writes an ultraviolet permanent. You read it wrong, that's your determinant. The sermon isn't meant for redemption, it's for measurement. I measure men by what they did when no one checked for them. And most of them were short, insufficient, never heaven sent. I revoke the invitation, no, I revoke the oxygen. This isn't confrontation, this is documentation of the moment your permission slipped its expiration. Now you're standing in a room that doesn't have your name, and I'm the one who took the name played off the door. Every frame is still, every still is law. I don't argue with the void, I notarize the flaw, emboss it in the margin where the weaker signatures dissolve. You thought the echo was applause, it was a cavity in the wall, and I was listening for tremors in the mortar will get called. I don't storm, I install.
Permission don't expire, I collect it back in person.
My cadence is a calculus of death you can't defer, syllabic arbitrager. I traffic in the blur between what you intended and what landed in the dirt. I study men who never learned the weight of what they've heard. The verb is revoke, the tense is past, the mood is absolute. I execute in linen suits, my records are immaculate. I document the latitude of every lie's trajectory, and where it fell the ground remembers, that's my directory. You thought the blade was metaphor until the sentence landed, and everything you build on saying with disassemble candid. I don't expand on what I mean, I stated once to leave, and men who meet it twice were never meant to breathe at this altitude, this aptitude, this chapel of exactitude, where every platitude gets stripped and shipped back to the manufacturer. I fractured the vernacular, man who thought that volume was a substitute for value. I'm the column in the ledger where your legacy gets audited, and every entry reads revoke, exhausted, forfeited. And I don't raid the archive, I preserve the quiet violence of a verdict unobserved. But nervy try to counterfeit was never yours to serve. I curved the language like a scalpel around the rumor you preferred. I prefer restraint and suppression more exact. I subtract until the architecture shows its low there and lack. And when it collapses I don't clap, I simply step back and catalog the fracture as a matter of intact fact.
Permission don't expire,
I read back in real time. Black bars over bravado, white noise over hollows. I don't erase you, I reveal the outline of your absence. Do a redraft and never pass revision, a clause without provision, a witness with no vision. I don't kill careers, I clarify omission.
I didn't lock the door behind you, I removed the door entirely now. There's just wall where you stand. Your access has been permanently revoked.
So when I said I'd come collect, you thought I spoke in metaphor. You mistook restraint for mercy. You mistook memory for folklore. I keep a ledger bound in patience, every entry etched in bone. Now that's a moral, not financial, can't be settled on the phone. I collect in person, staying still my shadow longer than your hall. You built a house of public praise and never noticed when the walls began to lean. I noticed I was measuring the angle. Every scandal that you strangled in his crib, I found a cradle. I'm the fable that the village tells when someone disappears, not into violence but irrelevance, the cruelest of frontiers. I don't raise my hand, I raise the standard till the air is thin, and men who couldn't breathe up here start bargaining to get back in. There is no end, there is no bargain. There is only what you owe and what I came for, stand still. This will go the way it has to go. My flow's a garrow made of gospel, every measure pulling tighter. I'm no fighter, I'm an auditor, and my pen is the indicator. I write the balance, then I leave, the ink is permanent. You'll read it every morning in the mirrors, determining. I don't chase, I don't rush, I don't circle back for closure. I expose the architecture of composure under pressure. Every pillar that you painted gold is hollow at the core. I tap it once, it answers me with everything it's hiding for. I don't threaten, I don't argue, I'm still collecting. The men I visit never see me coming, that's the craft. I arrive in past tense, meaning by the time I turn, I laughed already, left already cataloged the draft of every half apology you workshopped in your bath. I heard the version that you practiced and the version that you sent. The delta in between's the rent you owe on years you spent performing contrition like a concert. I was in the balcony, I saw the choreography, the fallacy, the calorie. You burned pretending that the weight of what you did could be reduced to a committee statement in a publicist's decree. I'm not the court of public opinion, I'm the court that never speaks. The one that operates in decades, not in cycles, not in weeks. My collection has no deadline, because my patience is the deadline. I arrive exactly when your comfort reaches its headline. And I subtract, not with violence, with precision. Every incision pre-approved by my own moral commission. You try to immortalize your guilt across a timeline of applause. Spread the costing quarterly reports and hope we forget the cost. But interest compounds in silence, in the place that no one claps, in the quiet after midnight, when the ceiling starts to crack. When your accolades are ash and every echo turns forensic, and the only voice that answers is the one you called relentless. That was me. I don't regret and I don't argue when I'm still collecting. You owe a debt to everyone you poison with your presence. I am the receipt. You owe a debt to every name you borrowed and discarded. I have the manifest. I have the manifest. You owe a debt to every silence that you mistook for forgiveness. The silence was me waiting. You owe a debt to every truth you folded in the narrative. I can't be original. You owe a debt to every witness you outlive. I outlived them all. And I waited long enough to earn my interest on your share. The compound rate is patience multiplied by perfect day. I don't miss, I don't adjust, I don't recalibrate, I calculate it once. I'm 2019 and the math still hasn't changed. Your skill sure, you'll always be short, and I'll always be here collecting. Because I hate you. Because the numbers asked me to. I don't threaten, I don't argue, I'm still collecting. I don't threaten, I don't threaten. I don't threaten, I don't argue, I'm still collecting. I left a copy of the balance in your foyer. You'll notice there's no payment option. That's because the currency is everything you have left. And I've already counted it twice. I don't threaten. Put the pen down, this eulogy writes itself. Put the pen down, this eulogy writes itself. Put the pen down, this eulogy writes itself. Yeah, I'll Officiate partures at a whisper calibrated frequency. Minimal ritual, clinical, pinnacle, surgical supremacy. No lilies, no litany, no lacrimal pageantry and pews. Just membrane and memory, metered inventory of you. Cataloged and calibrated cadence is critical, cyclical. Not grievance, but post-mortem, repertorial, lyrical. Bone tone, monotone, ten intention in suspension. Every stroke disrobes a rib from reputation's pension. You never knew discretion, so I freeze dry your inflection. In permafrost prose with worms word in succession. Multi-syllabic carrying algorithmic sediment. Each handful, hand scan, decimal dismemberment. Precision, incision, provision, supervision. Force proximity, perform a final revision. My mouth mouse the mic till the capsule tastes breath. Sermon turn surgeon, converting consonants to death. I lack a lackluster laurels and resonance consonants. Amber your remission in argumentative dominance. Separate sinew from sound, surround, confound, collapse. Extract hollow harmonics from hyperbolic labs. Borrow bravado, threadbare at the seam. I tailor drink truth through it. Brutal cut, lucid gleam, palladium palette. Metallic metric pressure, alloy myth with arithmetic texture. Each decimal deliberate, each period a plot, not pastoral property. It's the plot that you bought with bankrupt breaths, vow crown rhetoric cheap. So I repossess rhetoric, repose you in sleep.
4 inches from the mic.
4 inches from the grave. 4 inches from the grave.
Triple time Shabio, triplet driven rivers. Coffin crafted from couplets, consonantal pivots. Bar after ball, that's all evolved. Marble marrow mass. I don't ad-lib alibis or rehabilitate the past. Boxes this beat, body is bravado. Volume without value, vacuous vibrato. Noise roach and notice, I vocalize residue. No crowd cloud, just roach codes on magnitude. Flashbulb funeral, frame for fame. Negative, incurted, inverted was your name over. Exposed pros, underversed and exit ethics. Monument to frequency neglected metrics. Soon consumed, resonant vacancy prevailed. I remain reporting archival unveiled. Not witness to remember. Ender the record, future proof of amplitude implored. Subtract spectacle, structural subtraction. Column collapses under EBO reduction. I calculate character and cancelable script. Fractional fracture, denominator script. Cross multiply molded from margins. Hemorrhage you, the orums you flunder tremble under view. Decibels don't dignify deficit design. Authority isn't audible, it's accountable spine. Metronome merciless, take X7. Time audits adjectives, we folks forever. Waveform warms into one stable line. I sighed in silence. What was yours is mine. 4 inches from the grave. I bury louder letters before daylight declares them done. I buried arena architects whose echoes outrang what they become. I buried 10 commanders whose monuments met erosion. The grave I branded you was tuned, acoustically attuned. In the loop the lingers list each promise you pronounced and left in corrosion. 4 inches from the grave. I engineered the echo to educate and excavate. I structure the silence to subjugate and suffocate. Every brick is a bar you try to bypass in bravoure. Every theme is a breath you burned on borrowed aura. You mistook magnitude for meaning, volume for virtue. You forgot applause as a ceiling, and ceilings in virtue. This is not a eulogy, it's engineered enclosure. Structure stands sealed in sober composure. You're simply the last to learn you lived in its closure.
4 inches from the mic.
4 inches from the grave.
4 inches from the mic.
The service is over, but the recording never stops.
4 inches from the mic.
4 inches.
4 inches from the mic.
4 inches.
4 inches from the mic.
4 inches. The service is over, but the recording never stops.
The softer the handle, the deeper it goes.
I dress the blade in soul because the cut deserves a lineage, a heritage of hymns and hardwood, velvet grip and discipline. My method is a menace, it's a study in incision, how precision can be mercy when it functions as decision. I don't hack your consequence, I scoped it in the air, let the silence hold attention like a well-tailored prayer. But loud already had the stage that bruised it into brass. I enter with a whisper sharp enough to cut through glass. Dry count in the velvet, frequency and bone. If you cannot tell it's judgment, that confusion is the tone. Is it song or is it sentence? It's a harmony of both, a vowel pronounced in vibrato, a guillotine and oath. I let you feel the comfort of the handle in your palm, while a diagram of fall in symmetrical calm. Each vertebra aligning to a meter descent. There is beauty in correction when correction is intent. I don't raise my voice, I lower the room, tilt the ceiling just enough to foreshadow the bloom of inevitability, flowering clean at the throat. You will call it elegance before you call it note. And by the time you understand what elegance implies, the blade is already finished
Editing your lies. The velvet doesn't soften it. It just makes the scar worth framing.
I studied every soul, man, who could fracture a heart. Then that's what happens when the fracture becomes art. Not subtle, but exposure at impossible clarity, where beauty is the weapon and the wound of solidarity. My mother sang in minor keys that bent but never broke. My father left in quiet, so I sharpened what he spoke. Into absence, into harmony, wrapped tight around the nerve. I separate the tenant from the story you preserve. I don't wait for comprehension, comprehension trails behind. Understanding arrives later like a mercy to the mind. The bandage never sticks because the cut was drawn exact. You cannot heal for fiction once the fiction has been cracked. And when the velvet lifts away, you see yourself ornate, broken on your damage. Some electrical and laid. Every artery a paragraph, every vein a vow. I inscribe a living tissue, what you're reckoning with now. I never strike in anger, I illuminate design. Let the chamber echo truth in cathedral times. Tungsten on the floor, amber on the shame. I sand the grain of ego till it answers to its name. If you call it cruelty, and cruelty is clean, because what I removed was rot disguised as sheen.
For velvet doesn't soften it. It just makes the scar worth framing. I built this guillotine from church key wood on withheld replies. The wood is disciplined and the rope is swallow of goodbyes. The blade is doomed to A440 concert pitch. Cause if you end a thing, it should harmonize with truth.
I timber steel of silence until silence know my proof. I polish give her patience, to patience turn to sight. Beauty is not decoration, it is ordered in the light. The men who split the two build systems void of grace. I build systems beautiful enough to hold your faith.
Inevitable.
An inevitability hums before it forms a low cathedral tone. You must thank it for forgiveness, but it's gravity alone. Tailored from your history, now I'm the broken vows. I let you touch the velvet once. Well, now I let you bow. There is no anger in the drive, no tremor in the swing. Just symmetry complete and what imbalance drive your brain. And when the mechanism sings, because it always sings, it isn't death you'll hear it, it's alignment taking wing. Scales return to center, proportion redefined. I am not your executioner,
I am design. The velvet doesn't soften it. It just makes the scar worth framing. The handle is the last thing you admire. The blade is the last thing you'll know. When they study the scar, they'll praise the symmetry, never realizing symmetry was mercy.
The window closed, you're still rehearsing what you would have said.
The season for apology expired on a Tuesday. I marked it myself, not out of cruelty, but out of structural necessity. A building needs an end, a scaffolding. or it forgets its own design. And I refuse to live inside your endless renovation. You're permanent, I'm working on it. Weather, where every forecast promise reform and deliver postponement. So I became the calendar, circle consequence, and ink that doesn't fade. Annotated every year, you mistook intention for arrival, preparation for penance, rehearsal for repair. You staged remorse like a one-man production, blocking the light, polishing the script, wondering why the theater closed. I closed it, let me be precise. The theater was my patience, the last seat bore my name, and I left the ticket folded there as affidavit that I attended, that I listened, that I heard your prayer to the altar of your own rehabilitation, and found it insufficient, not in eloquence but in direction. You were praying inward, constructing a cathedral of self-reference, and I do not kneel in that congregation. Yeah, you confused endurance with endorsement. Thought my silence was support when it was surveillance. I was measuring load bearing truth against decorative confession. Every promise lacquered in vocabulary and never enacted in behavior. You called it introspection. It was orbit, circular and convenient, gravity theoretical, until it wasn't. And gravity is consequence and I'm continental. I do not drift to accommodate your tilt. I remain and let the fault line expose itself. You felt it and named it growth because guilt was too explicit. You traced fractures back to childhood as if history. We signed a contract, your present executed, but I audit decisions, not backstories. And your pose was steady when you chose. Apology season's over. I don't brand extensions. You believe time will perform a labor, a distance to cruise, absolution, no way entry is to cruise on slaving. Is that enough? Sign says between the act and now would neutralize the jars, but entropy does not govern moral physics here. My atmosphere, lie is preserved, cryogenic and exact. I can lift it to the light in 2026 and it refracts with identical clarity to the day you spoke it. Not a photon dimmer, I swim in a lake that never warms. Memory, mineral and permanent, each stroke disturbing sediment of intention you hoped would settle into obscurity. I read the strata, every year another band. Still guilt, I'm pressed into inconvenience, rebranded as misunderstanding. You invoke statutes and seasons, said it was a different time. I was low chronology, dilutes chemistry, but this is not chord, this is climate. Calibrated a pressure test confession, and in this air your apology dissolves like sugar and acid. The sweet and premise structurally hood. You narrate improvement as if narration were proof, mistaken articulation for amendment. But the diagnosis is not a cure and awareness is not atonement. You say I'm trying like a thesis statement, refined, defensible, fatigued, but trying is a hallway. And you never reach the wrong, where change requires discomfort without audience. You build roof from clauses, conditional and retractable, engineered for retreat and call them shelter. But shelter that fails and when this performance, not protection. The apology ceiling's over. Don't brand extension. So let me tell you what your apology sounded like to me. It sounded like a man locking his own door and calling it architecture. It sounded like a man drafting his own deadline and calling it discipline. It sounded like insulation, articulate insulation. Every sentence designed to keep consequence from touching skin. Yeah. It sounded like paperwork filed on the broth about a foundation rotted beneath the cabinet. It sounded like liturgy recited in the mirror where you were priest and parishioner and absolver. No one outside the glass was consulted. I was outside the whole time. I heard every word I mentioned. Tone against history, vow against evidence, cadence against conduct. And I decided the season is over, not because I'm cruel, because seasons end. That's what defines them. What follows is weather, unmediated. indifferent, unscripted. I will not lend you my coat. I will not become insulation for a conscience allergic to exposure. You assumed I was perpetual springless. Patience blooms without limit, but roots calculate risk. And mine chose stone overflow that never learned to nourish. Apology season's over. I don't bring extensions. Hollow brand extensions. This is the gospel where nobody gets saved. I preach a doctrine drier than the bones of lesser prophets. No prophet in my prophecy, no promise of deposit. You cannot tithe your way to absolution in my chapel. The gavel is my cadence and the pew was made of gravel. That was once the marble of a larger institution, built on the dilution of the truth into solution. Soluble, digestible, accessible to all. I don't do accessible, I do the bathroom wall. At judgment day, when someone scratch the real commandments, thou shalt not confuse volume 4 commitment. Thou shalt not rehearse sincerity. Thou shalt not offer clarity. It's charity when clarity is currency. This gospel has no water. You will drink it dry or not at all. The protocol is bone, not flesh. The ritual is small. You sick, you listen, you receive a sentence with your spine. I don't heal the spine, I read it. Every vertebra align in the scripture that your body wrote without your knowledge. The body doesn't lie, it holds the collars of every death the mouth's denied. And I am fluent in the skeletal. I translate femur into failure, scapula to escape, clavicle to the way you couldn't carry when it came time to be awake. I audit cartilage and courage in the same unblinking breath. I know the architecture of almost and the infrastructure of death. Not the burial kind, the kind that walks in signs. It's name and ink that disappears whenever consequence is framed. I frame nothing. I strip the gilding from the frame until the portrait is a posture and the posture is a claim. You stood when you should have knelt. You knelt when you should have stood. You traded marrow for applause and called a bargain good. No water in this gospel. Drink it bone dry or don't drink. My congregation is a room of men who swore they changed. The range of their ambition was the distance to the stage, where changes perform nightly to an audience of mirrors. I shatter every mirror with a frequency that's clearer than the image it reflected. Now you standing in the shards of your own spectacle, and every shard a card in the tarot I invented, where every suit is consequence and every draw is the tenor. Yo, shoulda known. I preach alone because the pulpit only fits precision, and precision is a solitary act of moral vision. I don't need amends, I don't need to sway your bodies, I need a body still, because stillness is the opposite of the performance that you substituted for your soul. Your soul's been out of body for a decade. I'm the toll booth on the highway back. You cannot pay the fares exact. It cost the one thing you refuse to give. The fact, the plane gone dry, unyielding fact. Confession here is not a river, it is a scalpel, it does not wash. It separates, it does not comfort, it clarifies. I divide something from intention, mercy from display, repentance from the rain you pay to keep your shame at bay. You want a choir to absorb you, incense thick enough to blur the blame. I offer ventilation, every syllable a flame that burns the fog from off your name, until the consonants are stark, until the vowels crack, that I knuckles in the dark. It's all carry, no beers, no preservation of your species of excuse. I let the flood be flood, I am the drought that follows true. The water in this gospel, drink it bone dry or don't drink. No water. No water in it. Gas. building stays. You don't
No water in this gospel. No water in this gospel.
no water. No, no, no water. No water, 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 water. No water in this gospel.
No water. No water. No water.
No water in it. Sight dismissed. The building stays. You don't. In the beginning was the word, but before the word, there was the silence that decided whether the word was necessary. I live in that silence. I have built a ministry of that silence. I fast from adjectives, I starve the sense down the bone. I let the now stand aching till it testifies alone. And when I speak, it is not because I have something to say. It is because the silence has finished its work, and the burden requires a voice. I am that voice, not loud, not persuasive, not kind, bone dry. Like the desert where every prophet went to learn that God doesn't repeat himself. And neither do I do not echo, I edge, I do not invite. I indict, every utterance is a chisel, every pause a right. This is the gospel on a single utterance said once. Man, permanently know him, no home, no water, just the word. Every bone is carved on, and when the carving's done, there is no altar call. Only the echo of your own name, sounding smaller than you thought it was, smaller than the light that built it, smaller than the silence that will keep it. No water, no water, no water, no water, no water, no water, and no water in this gospel. Water in this gospel. That's what it cost. Let me show you the invoice. The cost of never blinking is the atrophy of softness. The cornea converted to a courthouse, cross-examining conscience. Every brown apple's bone filed unnecessary losses. The loft where tenderness was warehoused now echoes with the process. I itemized the sacrifices in syllables and margins. Gave up sleep for syntax, warmth for sharpened arguments. Parallax existence, every angle under management, but none of them are home, just vanished coins and bantagements. The cost is chromatic. I see the spectrum of your error, an ultraviolet detail, every microfracture terror. But I can't recall the color of forgiveness in the morning, how it used to look in sunlight before discipline was law. And the banging on my post against the vault of self-control is audible at 3 a.m. when even still requests a soul. And I deny it, I refine it, triple time and hyperfocus, slow tempo, 7 so every flaw is left exposed. The cost is temporal, nothing rushes, nothing blurs, every frame preserved in merciless, meticulous rehearsals. Precision does to joy what blueprints do to churches. The drafts come without worshipers and called the silent purpose. I live inside the blueprint, measuring the rooms where I would have laughed out loud if laughter wasn't proof that I could still be moved. And movement is a risk, so I calcify the impulse, like the tenderness desist.
The blade stays sharp, the hand that holds it doesn't heal. The blade stays sharp, the hand that holds it
doesn't heal.
The blade stays sharp, the hand that holds it doesn't heal.
The blade stays sharp, the hand that holds it
doesn't heal.
The blade stays sharp, the hand that holds it. The blade stays sharp, the hand that holds it.
The blade stays sharp.
The cost is company, the radius of honest is one. I've been standing in the center since the sentence begun. Non-negotiable truth became a mode around breath. Every quotable bar, another brick in the depth. Women at the perimeter hearing me through the mortar. Calling the beautiful, I called it order. But beauty at this resolution's prostitution of closeness. Pixelated devotion is corrosion of focus. I can't let you blur me. The blurry where the weak live, where the ethic erodes and the lesser men speak slick. I studied every idol that diluted their thesis. Watched them trade edge for applause and call the erosion peace. They went soft, went home, let the architecture rust. Chose arms over armor, intimacy over trust. I understand the hunger. I catalog the 8, pressed it flat like a leaf that I refuse to let break it. You hold this vinyl to the light, you'll see. In veins of every night I chose to work over we. Every offered hand suspended in midair. Every almost love dissected for structural repair. In the word like the blade never once said thank you. It only stayed sharp. Exactly what I asked it to do. The blade stayed sharp. The hand that holds it. A mother called last winter. She said, Isaiah, you sound plenty. And I said, I am.
She paused, the way only a mother pauses when she hears the subtraction in her son's career. When clarity arrives, but comfort disappears.
She said, clear isn't the same as well. And that sentence settled heavy in the well of my chest. Like a kick but no snare, just pressure and depth. I sat with it still.
That's my ritual skill.
Complete awareness, no permission to feel.
Because to tell her she was right would dismantle the frame that keeps me upright in this unforgiving game. Would admit that the cost wasn't abstract or noble,
but personal,
proximal, painfully global.
So I said, I know, mama. 11 seconds of silence, I counted to air. Felt every unblinking year pressing back there. Like water against concrete that never complains. A dam built to block drumming and discipline veins. And for a flicker, a fracture, a tremor beneath, I wondered who I'd be if I loosen my teeth.
If I let the blade dull, that's enough to conceive
that healing requires what I refuse to need.
The blade stays sharp. The hand that holds it doesn't hit. This track is the only one where I show you the receipt. Line by line, breath by breath. Don't mistake transparency for surrender. Don't confuse inventory with regret.
I paid in softness.
I profited in sight.
And every night I balanced the ledger.
Under unforgiving light. This isn't confession, it's a campaign. Please stay sharp. Behold, it doesn't heal. This track is the only one where I show you the receipt.
I learned your language, and I learned the one that replaces it. My second language is the silence after I've been understood. The neighborhood where comprehension lives is very, very quiet. I pilot sentences into the space between your ribs, and when they land, the silence that results, that's my ad-lib. But I don't do ad-libs, I do aftermath. The math of what a room sounds like when every word is done its work, and there's nothing left but the atmospheric proof that something irreversible just happened on the roof of your understanding. I don't need you to respond. Your response is the silence that my statement caused. I starved the conversation of its oxygen on purpose. The surface of its quiet is a mirror. Look, that's your face in the absence of every excuse you had. I didn't remove them. I simply spoke with such specific gravity to be excuses left on their own, embarrassed by their own inadequacy in the proximity of precision. My decision to stop speaking is not a pause, it's a period, and periods are the only punctuation that the universe respects. The silence after I speak, that's the actual verse. I studied every language that a man could use to hide the dialects of deflection, the Creole if compromised, the pitching of it's complicated, the vernacular of both sides. I cataloged them all and then I learned to make them die by saying nothing, by holding the mic and letting the room hear itself without the music of your manufactured immunity. The community of noise you've built around your culpability collapsed the moment I introduced the facility of pure, undiluted, weaponized quiet. I didn't riot, I subtracted, and the subtraction was so total that the room became a cavity, a negative space in the shape of your name, and you stood inside it, hearing for the first time the sound of a world that doesn't need your narration. My silence is a nation where the anthem is a rest, the whole rest held indefinitely. And the flag is a blank page that will never be filled with your version of events. The silence after I speak. The silence after I speak, that's the actual verse.
I will teach you this language.
It has no alphabet, it has no grammar. It has only one rule: when the truth has been spoken, everything after it is trespassing. And I do not tolerate trespassers. So I stop not because I've run out of words. I have more words than any man in any room I've ever entered. I stop because the silence that follows my decision is more articulate than your entire vocabulary. And I refuse to compete with something that is already saying exactly what I mean. You thought eloquence was volume, that power needed percussion, every repetition required a chorus of combustion. But I am the combustion after oxygen is gone, the ringing in the ear when the argument has withdrawn. I don't echo, I eclipse, I don't rebut, I release. I let the statement stand alone, like a verdict without appeal, like a ceiling collapsing inward under the weight of what is real. There is a discipline, cut departure, an art to the onset, a blade that never touches skin, but leaves the ink gold blade. You reach for your rehearsed defense, it dissolves before it forms, because silence is a solvent, and I have mastered storms that never make a sound. When I withdraw my voice, I am not retreating, I am enlarging a perimeter of what you are hearing. The room begins to testify, the walls recall your tone, the floorboards creak in memory of how you stood alone. And suddenly the architecture is louder than your pain, every beam and borrowed breath agreeing silently with me. This is the language after language, the covenant of the concluded, where truth does not repeat itself, because it has already been included. It was, it stands unedited, unassisted. Every extra word you had arrives already dismissed. The silence after I speak, that's the actual verse.
I'm finished. Listen to what the room says now. I'm finished.
Listen to what the room says now.
I'm finished.
I'm finished. I remember everything, and everything is loaded. I remember everything, and everything is loaded. Now memories and armory, climate control decoded. Every shelf annotated, every incident noted, with the date, the time, the latitude of your collapse. I don't relive the past, I relabel it as perhaps. Endeavor to I tailor it, cut it to present tense. Wear it into the room like immaculate evidence. Thread it with the tremor in your left hand on the grain of the table when you lied and called the thunder rain. You believed in a rose and in the mercy of blur. Thought the years would sand the edges of the things that were. But my hippocampus comes like a generator, archivist and operator, calibrated annotator. I can quote you to your face with the breath you used to say it. Even replicate the pause where you almost tried to weigh it. I was the weather in the room when you assembled your disguise. I charted pressure drops behind the barometer of your eyes, and the forecast never faltered. It was always this: what you prayed out in this place is clenched inside my fist.
Those friends.
My memory's the magazine, every detail is around. I remember 21, the meeting with the grand, where you traded principle for proximity to win. Smile like you negotiated gravity itself. Stacked integrity for optics on a temporary shelf. When you resurfaced in 23 with a rebrand and a creed, new type of beefy of virtue. Sure 8 feet, I had the cross-reference waiting and a folder mark before. Same margins of ambition, same bargain at the core. You changed the header, not the body of the text. Different pharmacologists, identical subtext. My retention's geologic, sediment is sown. Every layer of concession, pressure sealed and known. I'm the paleontologist, the promises you broke. Brush the dust from widow vows, reconstruct the smoke. And the mic never muted though you brought the curtain fell. It captured every whisper, you confessed yourself as well. Man, the daughter remembers what charisma can erase. Timestamps, tattoo tools beneath the powder on your face. My memory's the magazine, every detail is around. The coolest thing about my memory is that it isn't angry. The coolest thing about my memory is that it isn't angry. The coolest thing about my memory is that it isn't angry. The cousin tremble when it speaks, it doesn't sharpen full effect. It arranges what occurred beneath museum light. It labels it a neutral link, the grammar just correct. This is what happened. The subject has denied it, but record has not. I am the museum and the exhibit and the guard. No spectacle of vengeance, just the patience of a shard. A clash between you and the version you perform. I narrating in the tone so level it becomes a storm. Ride this out, I prefer to hush a documented fact. Forever wrapped and lands heavier than impact. No gavel slam required, no theatrical surround. The bullet is the memory, the chamber is the sound. I don't fire in a frenzy, I recite and let it settle. Watch composure, stark a fracture under clinical man. You can change your name, you can change your city, but the file doesn't move, and I don't forget where I put things. I remember the carcass pattern stained beneath the chair. The way you practice innocence like rehearsed queer. You can archive every headline, migrate every regret, but my weak girl doesn't migrate. It has not fired yet. I remember everything. And everything is loaded. You can change, you can change, you can change, you can change, you can change your name. I remember everything. And everything is loaded. And everything is loaded. I never raised my voice. That's why you never saw it coming. conversation volume is the frequency of checkmate. The calibrated decibel where a man can dismantle your estate without the neighbors hearing, without the windows breaking. The making of a consequence so quiet it passes for courtesy. Compound interest in a silk love, accruing while you're thanking me. The rooms I've emptied never knew they were evacuating. The exits I administered were tempered like a seasoning. Pass the salt, I said, and you comply without suspicion, never noticing the table was the deposition. The dinner right here in the linen folded like a flag at your reputation's burial. The bread you broke was the last supper of your credibility. The wine assigned affidavit poured slowly into liability. The ability to end a man at 62 decibels is not a skill, it's a biome, an ecosystem engineered from the bones of restraint in time. Every organism in it speaks like rain on a library window, barely audible, infinitely inevitable. I don't detonate, I document, I don't explode, I expose in tone, so a measure they pass for mentorship until the mentorship becomes memorial.
62 decibels. That's all consequence requires.
My father was a quiet man who lost a louder man, and I decided then at 10 that I would weaponize his frequency. Retrofit the whisper with a payload, turn the softness they mocked into a shipping lane for verdicts. The same volume they misread as frailty became the trade route for the heaviest cargo ever carried by a mouth. The route runs north to south through conference rooms and courtrooms, through classrooms. We quiet boys were graded down for not performing conviction like spectacles. I am the admiral of a fleet of whispered ships that entered the harbor of your confidence undetected, docked beneath your certainty and unloaded truth so dense they bent the pier. I speak like I'm ordering coffee, no tremor, no tremolo. And by the time you realize the cup is your legacy, silting over the counter, it's already cold, already spreading, already staining surfaces you swore were sealed. But nothing is sealed against precision, nothing is insulated against accuracy. A voice does not lead belief to be reflected, it needs calibration. And that conversation, boy, calibration is sovereign. 62 decibels, that's all consequence requires.
I want you to understand something. Every man who ever dismantled another man's life did it at conversation volume. The danger who denied the loan, conversation volume. The doctor who delivered the diagnosis, conversation volume. The judge who read the sentence, conversation volume. The board that voted you out, the partner who signed beneath your name, the friend who said, I think it's time.
9/11 scream.
The scream is the amateur's frequency. The novice confuses volume with velocity, where professionals of consequence have always spoken like this. Measured, moderated, merciless, and very strange.
Like me, like now, like this exact calibration, where the air between my lips and the microphone equals the air between your ears
and the rest of your life. I didn't invent conversation volume, I simply refused escalation, refused distortion, refused the fear of outrage, and refusing, I became the quietest thing in every room, and the last thing anyone remembers. Not because I shouted,
because I was correct.
62 decibels.
62 decibels,
That's all consequence.
consequence required.
This is the volume in which empires end. Now with a shout,
62
with a sentence,
decibels, that's all
and room temperature.
consequence required.
delivered politely, filed permanently.
We keep waiting for the blade to go back. There is no back.
The sheath was a courtesy, I rescinded in the first installment. Permanent installment plan on consequence, no refinancing repentance. I see men who host the early, polish the image, get measured and treasured for temperance. But temperance turned to tolerance for negligence. Every truce was a noose on recess, a cigarette break for recklessness. I don't recess, I redress, I compress ethics into a single-edged thesis. Thesis, defense with a thesis that slices. My proximity is surgical, 4 inches from verdict, every plosive a post-charge dispersal of nervousness. The world never stopped requiring wing incision. Precision lives in aggression, it's maintenance. It's covenantal alignment with angles that don't apologize. I don't romanticize dullness, I metabolize sharpness. Chromosome of consequence, dominant, prominent, constant, audit in sonic form. I stay at the edge because the edge is homeostasis. You call it extremity, I call it dosage. Calibrated voltage across moral corrosion. Corrosion never sleeps, so the blade never dreams. No off switch in the bloodstream. Bloodstream hums with a mission that doesn't vacation from vigilance. Exactitude is my residence, permanent tenant in a climate of pretense. I am the cut that doesn't bleed because of cauterized empathy at the entrance.
The blade don't sheath, the blade don't rest, the blade don't act.
I'm in sharp along the metal, forgot neutrality. Duality dissolved, as brutality married to utility. Civilian minds can't compute the continuity. Perpetual deployment rewrote my immunity. I filed down every softness that threatened the geometry. Symmetry of purpose purchased with private austerity. Scarcity of mercy for the parts of me craving plurality. I amputated comfort for clarity. Charity ended where accuracy started. The market applauds moderation, but moderation marketed cowardice. I bargain with no one. The equation stays solved because I subtract the irrelevant, relevant. No need to reverence for standards that standardize excellence. Excellence, weaponized resonance, crystallizing vertebrae. Ram shots ricochet like the cardiac metronome racing. The flatline, deadline, energy, at night. They don't see for moral latency. Latency kills nations. I operate in milliseconds. Discipline, militant, filament, tight syllables, splitting the ligaments of limited thinking. I'm sinking in synchrony with execution at maximum density. Triple times elementary reading integrity. All is steady at altitude where platitudes suffocate. Suffocation, a sloppiness mandatory. Mandatory minimum for men who confuse applause with authority. Authority, arted fraudulent ornaments torn from the torso. The voice that never breaks broke everything unnecessary first. We're also for worst case universes. Been to the spillest force in the room, and I'm still lethal, still until motion requires correction.
The blade don't sheath, the blade don't rest, the blade don't act. The blade don't act. Like with the blade don't sheath, the blade don't rest, the blade don't. Get with the blade to go back. Every profile, you'll rethink peace. Every encrypted plea from the audience that preferred me decorative.
Can you soften? Can you rest? Can you be less exact? No. The blade is not branded, it's biography.
Not a persona,
A perimeter.
Not
aggression, alignment. I don't want softness, I want accuracy. So ruthless comfort becomes obsolete. I want exactness, so absolute trust replaces warmth. Trust says the incision precedes infection. Trust says the cut was prevention, not punishment. Trust says if it bled, it needed opening. The blade remains out because just honesty remains ambient. Ambient like soft base and bone. Ambient like breath on glass. Ambient like men rehearsing virtual with microphones off. I don't rehearse. I don't rehearse. I don't rehearse.
keep was a courtesy. The courtesy expired. The blade is the biography. The biography is permanent deployment.
This is the last track. But the mic stays on. It has always stayed on. It will stay on after I stop speaking. That's the point. That was always the point. I said what I came to say and measured deposits. 11 ledgers balanced, no deficit in conscience. Every consonant documented, every clock is placed with architectural intent, cemented in the permanent record. No edit button for a man who edits himself before the sentence leaves the lung. I was young once but never undone, never spun by the hunger for applause, because applause is a clause that expires when the room clears. And I built this on the frequency that lingers after cheers evaporate. Calibrated breath against truth until the boost became a courtroom, and the waveform testified. Fossilized conviction in every capsule I pressed my mouth against. Industry wanted volume, I wanted voltage. Control, deliberate. The inheritance of a father who kept quiet accounts and never collected, so I collected in couplets and columns, in sub-bass registered in sternum and bone. 12 receipts for every debt that thought it would age into forgiveness. This is not vengeance, it's accounting the mounting of evidence spoken calmly enough to feel like mercy, until you realize mercy and never flinch. I fold the instruments when the incision holds. I case the craft, but the blade remains displayed. Not as theater, but as proof. Precision lived here, clarity cost this much. And the man who delivered it never once raised his voice to when the mic stays on.
Even after I'm done.
Especially after I'm done. This record was not reconciliation, it was calibration. A nation of ears reminded that clarity is the most dangerous register. A charity does not require surrender or standard. I commanded nothing, I simply occupied center and watched the room reconfigure around stillness. Surgical syllables thinning excess, like a sculptor removing everything that wasn't formed. The storm you expected never arrived because the storm was discipline. 62 decibels of finished thought, no froth, no bluff, just breathe, budgeted against necessity. Triple time testimony, tapering into inevitability. I loved enough to cut only what required removal. No more, no less, no spectacle in the section, just correction. The groove itself, a demonstration that restraint is not weakness but mastery. That a rim shot used once can land heavier than 1,000 strikes. That a foul note sustained can close a circle louder than a scream. I checked the work twice and cut once, and when the suture held, I stepped back, not exhausted, complete.
The mic stays on. Even after I'm done. The mic stays on.
I want the tent to clean. I was never angry.
Not once.
Anger is unfinished math. I finished the equation before the album began. What you heard was not heat, it was a row. A man reading the answer into record. No tremor, no doubt, just that. The record is complete, but the mic stays on, because it was never mine, it belongs to the room. And the room belongs to whoever presses play and hears themselves in the silence between these words. The blade remains out,
Not flake.
service. The sharpest act of my life was refusing to dull myself.